Welcome to the Rockpile Podcast, the show where journeys are told, challenges are embraced, and victories are celebrated. Touchdown! This is your platform for authentic conversations with athletes, coaches, teams, business leaders, and so much more. Every episode dives deep into the highs, the lows, and the obstacles that shape incredible stories of resilience and triumph. Ready? Right. Whether you're chasing your dreams, overcoming adversity, or simply looking for inspiration, you've come to the right place. So, let's climb together. This is the Rock Pile.
Man, I am pumped up tonight to talk some college football. Welcome to another edition here on Chalk Talk tonight on the Rock Pile Podcast. If you're listening to me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok is the new one. Make sure if you have any questions, you put them in the comment box. I'll try to pull as many over as I can tonight. As always, like, share, subscribe to the channel if you have not. And the podcast will be up on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify as well. So I appreciate the follow. I can't believe we're down to the last 2 weeks. We're already down to the semifinal matchups, and then next week we will have the national championship, which seems a little odd. We're going to crown one in January, the end of January, mid-January, which seems a little late, but we'll get into a little bit of the games from last week. Not much to talk about. I thought they weren't very good. There was a couple of good games. A lot of people questioning the format of the 12 teams. I think you can agree that I like the 12 teams, but I think that the format of it, and we can talk about all that in just a little bit. But first, I want to just talk a little bit about the top 4 playoff seeds, which if you look down there on the screen, they all lost. So Oregon lost, Georgia lost, Boise State lost, Arizona State lost, and all of them had home games. So the question that comes about is, do you get rid of the automatic qualifiers with the conference champs? I still think that you seed this puppy 1 through 12, similar to the FCS. 1 plays 12, 2 plays 11, 3 plays 10, almost like the NCAA tournament. Now, you can arguably say that the teams that these teams, 4 teams, lost to were the better teams, right? Ohio State beat Oregon, Notre Dame beat Georgia, Penn State beat Boise State, but Arizona State should have beaten Texas. I put that on the Arizona State staff in overtime, but I think I'll get beat to the better teams. Now, I think the long layover, there was like a 24, 25 day window that these teams didn't play. And you can argue both sides. You can argue and say, well, you rest players, you get healthy, or you take like Ohio State that's gotten hot since the loss to Michigan, and week to week you want to keep playing. So I can see the arguments both ways. Or do you seed them 1 through 12, and the higher seeds get the home games, which I thought the home playoff games were awesome for the schools. Penn State was packed. Ohio State, the stadium, 100,000 people. I love the home field in a playoff. So you'd get more home games. And then as you get into the later rounds, you still have the big bowl games because you need the money. One thing I've noticed from all these games has been very easily. The Big Ten has been king here in the bowl season. I want to give you some numbers here. The Big Ten, just in the playoffs, has brought in $28 million. Okay, $28 million the Big Ten's brought in. The SEC, which at this point is Texas, has brought in $14 million. Notre Dame, which isn't in the conference, they're independent, are going to bring in $14 million. And then whichever team gets to the finals, if we see Penn State and Ohio State, that's another $12 million. So you could see $40 million going to the Big Ten. And during the other bowl games, I didn't watch a lot of them. I won't lie to you. I watched Michigan beat Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think it was a horrible year for Kalen DeBoer, and I love Kalen DeBoer. You can't lose 4 games at Alabama. Jalen Milroe, I know everybody said, well, he was coming back this past year. I think it's going to do Kalen DeBoer well for Jalen Milroe to go away. I think he had a horrible season, horrible. He turned the ball over. I think he still threw for over 2,000 yards, but you can't lose 4 games at Alabama. I got news for you. If he goes in next year and loses 2 or 3 games and he doesn't make the playoff, Kalen DeBoer is done in Alabama. I don't care what anybody says. He's done. And I like him. I think he can get any other job in college football. The Fighting Illini beat South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. Tip your hat to Brett Bielema. Does he not get enough credit? I know some people don't like him. The guy, all he does is win, sort of like PJ Fleck, who beat Virginia Tech. And I know Vatek was down this year, and Virginia Tech came into the year with really high expectations. And PJ Fleck does something in the Big Ten at a school like Minnesota, who Minnesota's never going to be in the playoff. I just don't see it. Not with USC coming over, not with Oregon coming over. I still think the top half of the Big Ten, the first 5-6 teams, Penn State, Michigan's going to be a lot better next year. I think it's going to be tough for like a Minnesota to get there. But again, I think for PJ Fleck to go win 8 or 9 games a year at Minnesota with, I think, very limited resources at Minnesota, I think he should put in for another job. I actually thought when the Michigan job was open before Jim Harbaugh, I would have been okay with PJ Fleck because he wins games. I think Brett Bielema's win, the Fighting Illini, when they beat South Carolina, who myself included, I thought South Carolina or Ole Miss should have been in the playoff. There was no hotter team in the country than South Carolina, and Ole Miss just completely spanked. I mean, they waxed. Trying to think of who. Oh, Duke. They beat Duke, and they waxed Duke. And that was – I like Lane Kiffin, but Lane Kiffin throwing the ball up 30. I don't know. He said, well, we had something to prove. I don't know what you had to prove. I mean, Alabama lost. People thought that if SMU would have lost, Alabama would have got in. I don't know if Alabama would have got in. They stunk. They lost to a 6-6 Oklahoma. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, a really bad Kentucky team this year. And South Carolina at the beginning of the year struggled, and then they were red hot at the right time. But look at those 3 wins in those other bowl games. Michigan, who, again, we all know that I'm a Michigan fan. And next year, they're going to be preseason top 10. They're going to be a lot better next year. They beat Alabama with no passing game. Again, they won it with defense, a run game. And I just can't believe, as I watch Ohio State, and we'll get into these games here, I just cannot believe Ohio State didn't wax Michigan. Watching Ohio State the last 2 weeks, Ryan Day's coaching on a mission. Ryan Day's coaching pissed off at the world. And how about this? And I'm going to say this. As many of you that have been following me, and I appreciate it because the following's been really good on doing this show, which has been fun because I love talking college football. Everybody knows I've repeated this and said Ohio State I picked in August to win the national championship. And I am going to pick them again, even though next week's the game. We'll see if they get by Texas, and I'll break down the game next week and give you my pick. But I'm going to pick Ohio State. I can't go back on my pick. And I'm a Michigan fan that picked Ohio State because I said they're the best roster in the country. They have the best skilled guys in the country. They have the best defense in the country. They just got a coach that's got a Michigan problem. But anyways, let's not talk about that anymore. I don't want to reiterate that Ryan Day's 0-4 against Michigan. I think, win or lose, and I said this with Jim Harbaugh last year before the season started. I said, no matter what happens, and Jim Harbaugh knew he had a really good team coming back, but I said, no matter what happens, if he loses to Ohio State or he doesn't make the playoff or whatever it might be, Jim Harbaugh's gone, regardless. And Jim Harbaugh went to the Chargers. The Chargers are in the playoffs this week. Guess who the Chargers get to play? Tell me this isn't a coincidence. They're playing the Texans. The quarterback of the Texans is C.J. Stroud, who played for the Ohio State University, who couldn't beat Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Now he gets another chance at Harbaugh in the NFL, which I still think the Chargers will beat the Texans, but I don't really like to talk NFL because I love college football. And I'm going to make this prediction on Ryan Day. Ryan Day has like a 62-10. I mean, he has just beaten everybody outside of Michigan. And he's been terrible in big games, but he's coaching pissed off. I'm going to say this. Ryan Day might leave on his own terms, win or lose, and go to the NFL. Maybe as a coordinator or a head coach. He's got NFL experience. I'm sure he'd be a hot commodity. Matt Campbell, the Iowa State coach, is interviewing for the Chicago Bears job in the NFL. If I'm Ryan Day, and I don't have any of this on my notes, I'm just kind of going off cuff here because it was coming to me as I'm talking here. Win or lose, maybe he goes off and just says, you know what? I don't want to deal with the pressure of having to beat Michigan. I don't want to have to deal with the death threats to family members, his kids. Like that's horrible. I don't like Ryan Day, but that's horrible. No coach at any sport, any level, should get death threats from enemy, especially your kids. Like that's no. Kirk Herbstreit ran out of Columbus because Ohio State fans ran him out of Dodge because of Herbstreit made some comments about Ohio State as an analyst, and they booed the living you-know-what out of him. And now they say Herbie's an SEC homer, and they don't like him now. I'm not saying it happens. I'm just going to say, just write it down. If you're a gambling person, maybe it's 500 to 1, 200 to 1. Ryan Day leaves Ohio State, goes to the NFL. Mike Vrabel, who probably, I think he interviewed for the Patriots job, and I think he's going to have any NFL job that he wants, comes to Columbus next year. Or maybe Ryan Day wins the national title and he goes, F you, I'm out. I don't know. We'll see. So the Big Ten was king during bowl season. They're going to come with a lot of money at the end of the season when these games are done. So I want to just talk about a few of these games from last week. Again, I don't think a lot of them are worth spending too much time on. I thought the Arizona State-Texas game was really good. Texas got off to a really good start. You know, the first half they were up 17-3, and then, you know, the second half Arizona State comes back, and it's like next thing you know, you look up, it's like, oh my goodness, Arizona State may win this game. I have not been sold on Texas the entire season. They didn't play a really tough schedule in their first year in the SEC. Sark's a really good coach. I think Sark's going to get some looks in the NFL. Might be getting some looks already. And Colin Cowherd said this years ago, about a month ago. He said there's a coach right now in the playoff, a big name coach that's not going to be coaching in college next year. Maybe it's Sark. I can see Sark getting a look in the NFL. I can see Ryan Day getting a look in the NFL when we damn well know Marcus Freeman's going to get a look in the NFL. I think Freeman belongs in the college game. I'll say that. Sark, I don't know. I'm not a huge Sark guy. But I think he's a good offensive mind. I think he's like Lane Kiffin. They're two really good offensive coordinators. Maybe he goes in. I don't know. We'll see. But this Texas game, the one thing I'll tell you, and I think everybody saw this and that watched the game, is Cam Scadaboo was unreal. If you're an NFL GM and you watch this game, this kid's throwing up on the sidelines. I think he had like 25 or 30 carries. Actually, my note says he had 30 carries for 143 and 2 touchdowns. That is insane, especially against that Texas front that's legit. Like Texas's front four, and that's going to be one of the common themes in these semifinal games when I get to them. The front fours are unbelievable. The front fours are really good at stopping the run. They're physical. And I think that's going to be the common denominator with both semifinal games is what team's going to dominate the trenches offensively, who can run the football, and defensively, if you can stop the run, what quarterback makes the big play. And right now, I'll be honest with you, Quinn Ewers was good. He made the big throw on 4th and 13. I just don't have a lot of faith in him. I still think that Archie Manning should be the quarterback for Texas. I think Arch gives them the best option to win He can run the ball. He's big. He's got the big arm. Ewer's ball just kind of like floats. And I don't have a lot of confidence in him in big games. Like if they get behind, like Texas as a team only ran the ball for 53 yards. Now you're going up against the best defense in the country, the best run defense in the country, and you only ran the ball for 53 yards against Arizona State. So huge nod there for the Buckeyes. But tip your hat to Kenny Dillingham. I think he did a phenomenal job coaching this year, the youngest coach in college football. I think Arizona State's not going anywhere in the Big 12. I think they're going to be around for a long time with him as the head coach. I think he'll get some other opportunities, but he played there. He's an alum. I don't think he's going anywhere. But Texas, 39-31, prevailed in that game. The Rose Bowl, as I was just saying, Ryan Day has coached pissed off, quite frankly. He has looked like a guy on a mission where when you watch them play, this game was done. This game was 34-0, and then it was 34-8 at halftime. And they have just looked completely different since the Michigan game. They're finding ways to utilize the best receiving core in the country. Jeremiah Smith is unreal. As a Michigan fan, I'm really pissed off that he's got to come back for another year because you can't cover him. You cannot cover him. He's NFL right now, caliber ready. You could probably say that if he came out this year, I know you got Travis Hunter, Shador, and Cam Ward are going to be the 3 top picks in the draft. I'd probably tell you Jeremiah Smith may beat them all and go number 1 if he came out this year, but he can't come out this year. He was phenomenal. Emeka Egbuka was phenomenal. Cardell Tate, they ran the ball really well with Henderson and Judkins. Will Howard was finally able to exploit the defense downfield with the passing game. And Oregon, quite frankly, they only had 23 yards rushing. Now, I know they got behind big, and they weren't going to run the ball and beat Ohio State. So they had to throw the ball. Dylan Gabriel was good, but they just got behind, so big early that Ohio State, called the dogs off a little bit. I'm not taking anything away from Dan Lannon. Listen, Dan Lannon did not complain one bit and say, well, the layoff killed us. The bracket killed us. The bracket wrecked him because he got screwed. There's no way the number 1 seed, even if Tennessee beat Ohio State, that path to get there, to having to beat either Tennessee or Ohio State, Oregon got screwed. And I didn't hear Dan Lanning once complain and say, nope, it shouldn't have been that way. We would have had a better chance. He did not complain once. But good luck as the number 1 seed. You got to go play Ohio State. Good luck, right? Wasn't going to happen. They got a bad draw. So Ohio State wins in that one. And then you go to Penn State. I don't know if anybody was really surprised at this game either. I mean, one thing that I will say is Penn State, outside of Genty, had like the 25-yard run, 26-yard run. Genty had 104 yards. Take the big run away. They shut him down. Drew Aller was good. But I think what people forget with this Penn State team, like a month ago I said, and what's really crazy is this. I've been really big on Penn State and Notre Dame late the last month and said 2 really good defenses, physical up front. I think Drew Aller's playing really well. The Penn State-Oregon game really showed me and proved me that Penn State can score throwing the football. Because against Oregon in the Big Ten title game, I said to myself, Oregon's going to just destroy them. Penn State can't score. All they got is Tyler Warren, the tight end. They got good backs, but there's no way they're going to be able to run the football and beat Oregon. They threw the ball. And Eller threw the ball for just under 200 yards. He didn't really make the big mistake. But they have 2 really good backs. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are 2 really good backs. They're almost 2,000-yard rushers. They ran the ball for over 200 yards, but this was the key stat to me. 9 tackles for a loss in that game against Boise State. And I felt really bad because Maddox Madsen, the quarterback for Boise State, had a really good year. Struggled through the 3 picks in that game, and Penn State's defense was just lights out. Genty, I just saw declared for the NFL draft, which I don't think anybody was surprised to see that. They were a 2-touchdown underdog. Penn State covered. It was close for a little bit. But I do think Penn State's got a shot to win this whole thing if they get by this week. They get the winner, Texas and Ohio State. So we'll see. So not too much to talk about there. And then the other game, again, I don't know about this. Everybody's going to say, well, Georgia didn't have Carson Beck, but Beck really wasn't that good all year for Georgia. I don't think this was the same Georgia team that had the weapons on the outside. Defensively, they were good up front. They always are under Kirby Smart. But you can argue and say this wasn't the same Georgia team. And I know Kirby said, listen, we played a really tough schedule. This game was close. Notre Dame ran the football. Riley Leonard only threw the ball for 90 yards. But they had the 98-yard kickoff return to start the second half. And then Georgia just couldn't get anything going on offense. So I know the score, they won by 2 touchdowns, but this game was like 13-3 until the kickoff return for a touchdown in the third quarter. And then Marcus Freeman on fourth down when he ran 11 guys off and then ran 11 guys on, and got Georgia to jump. And it was a first down, and that ended up being a big play for them to run the clock out. It's like I watched today, they showed the press conference, and they showed James Franklin, who, again, Franklin's knock is he hasn't won a big game. And I know you can say he's won 2 playoff games, but I think until he beats Ohio State or Michigan, he'll get the monkey off his back. Everybody expected him to beat Boise State. I don't think anybody would say they would have thought Boise State would have beat him. So they've won 2 playoff games against 2 teams that they should have beat. They had the easier path than what Oregon did, who, again, won the Big Ten. But James Franklin in the press conference today, sitting next to Marcus Freeman, says, well, I think that nothing against the guy right here, as he's sitting with Marcus Freeman, nothing against the guy right here. But I think if you're not in a conference and you don't play for a conference championship, then you don't belong. And he's saying this with Marcus Freeman. He kept saying, nothing against Coach, he's the head coach of the team you're talking about. And I'll tell you this much. Marcus Freeman sat there as about as calm and cool, collective as you can possibly be. And he's a Buckeye, and I absolutely love Marcus Freeman. There's 3 teams as a Michigan fan you don't like. You don't like Notre Dame because Michigan-Notre Dame was a rivalry. You hate Ohio State, and you don't like Michigan State. But the Michigan State rivalry's kind of faded off a little bit because Michigan State's been down. So I really don't look at that anymore. It's an in-state rivalry, but I don't look at it the way the same of the game against Ohio State. But you don't like him. And Marcus Freeman played for Ohio State. I like the guy. But he's sitting there the whole time looking at James Franklin. He's got to be sitting there saying, boy, I hope I kick his ass. Because here all James Franklin is talking about, well, you got to end a conference championship, blah, blah, blah. And Marcus Freeman just sitting there like, okay, buddy, just keep talking. Keep talking. So I give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit. But going back to James Franklin, I think he's got to win this game to get the monkey off his back to say he's won a big game. Because, again, you beat 2 cupcakes and you had a really easy path to get to the semifinals. But credit him, right? You still won these 2 games. So that game to me for Notre Dame and Georgia, I don't think it was the same. Gunnar Stockton didn't play bad for Georgia, but it just wasn't the same Georgia team. But Notre Dame was physical up front, so not surprised. Let's get to these 2 playoff games, and I'm going to give you both picks here, and we'll wrap things up. But before I get into those, I got a lot of good things happening on the Rock Pile. There'll be some merchandise that'll be coming out, some shirts. If anybody's interested in some of the shirts, they can buy those. The Mohawk Valley Sports Watch returns on Sunday. I'm going to talk Utica University hockey with Gary Heenan. I'm also going to talk to the owner of Copper City Fitness, Tiffany Mills. And then at 10:30, normally I'm the guy doing the interviews. I'm going to be the interviewee, as I'm going to be joining Rock Capone on the Rock Capone Show on Sunday morning as well. There'll be some other things coming down the pipeline here. I'm going to be doing a show on mental health with athletes. I have a couple administrators from Colgate University that specialize in that's going to come on with me here probably at the end of the month. So a lot of good things happening on the Rock Pile podcast. So thanks for following the show. I really appreciate that. So let's start what I think, which is going to be the best game of the 2. This Penn State Notre Dame game, and as I always say on these shows, you can't see them, and I don't have it on paper, but I have all my notes kind of on my screen. And I'll be honest with you, I really don't even look at my notes because I know what I want to talk about when I come on the show. But then there's been times where um, I already have my picks, but then sometimes I talk myself into switching my picks. And then it's like you just pick with your heart because go with your gut that normally works for you. So I don't want to talk myself out of my picks. This, I really think you can flip a coin. That's how equal I think these two teams are. Now, the one thing I'm going to say for this is I think Drew Aller finally, late in the season, I think it's been that Big Ten title game, finally is the guy that Penn State thought he was going to be to take Penn State to the next level and play for championships. He had a lot of expectations coming in, and he's coming back another year, which is the reason why both their backup quarterback transferred, and I don't blame him. But he's coming back. So I think Drew Aller has played really well here as of late. He made some really big throws against Boise State, but again, it's Boise State. I think a big key for Penn State's going to be if Abdul Carter, the All-American first-round draft pick, is going to be able to give it a go this week. And there's been some stuff on social media with Abdul Carter. I think there was one he was dressed as like Darth Vader, and we haven't really seen the injury report saying he's going to give it a go or not. But they're really deep up front. I think they really got to make Notre Dame one-dimensional. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be able to pound the rock and beat Penn State. Penn State just shut down the best back in the country in Aston Genty. You can say he's the best back in the country, right? He rushed for 2,000 yards, I think, in a week conference, but in a week schedule, but I'm not going to get into that. I don't think they're going to physically be able to just pound the rock and beat Penn State. I said the entire season, especially when Penn State got into the playoffs, I said, if you have to go to Penn State in January, late December, against that front four, good luck. And so far, nobody's really been able to run the football against Penn State. Even against Ohio State, Penn State did a really good job. I think they got to make Notre Dame one-dimensional. Again, I think this game to me is going to come down to the two quarterbacks. I love Riley Leonard. He runs the football well. I don't see Notre Dame pounding the rock against Penn State. And I don't see Penn State pounding the rock against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense ranks second in scoring. They only give up 13 points a game. And they don't give up a lot of yards rushing either. So to me can Penn State get Riley Leonard and Notre Dame in third and long? Special teams was huge for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's got the better kicker. I know people are going to say, well, geez, you come down to the kickers. Well, I think Mitch Jeter's a really good kicker. Special teams can come into play in games like this, a key fumble, a block punt, block field goal, something crazy in the special teams always finds a way in big games. The other thing is Notre Dame really struggled against Georgia against press coverage. Penn State's going to play man-to-man coverage, and they're going to let their front four say, we're going to get after the quarterback. We're going to challenge you to beat us throwing the football. Now, Riley Leonard threw the ball a lot more at Duke than he has at Notre Dame. But again, my philosophy, and I'm old school, I'm going to run the football until you stop me, and I'm going to make the other team pass to beat you. And I think that's what Notre Dame's going to do. I think Notre Dame is going to run the football. They're going to run their offense. They're going to run Riley Leonard, and they're going to say, Penn State, stop us. And if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, that's what Notre Dame needs to be in. And I think you can say the same thing for Penn State. How is Notre Dame going to attack Tyler Warren, the All-American tight end, which nobody has been able to handle? Think about this for Penn State. Penn State right now, their leading receivers, the tight end, Tyler Warren, who, again, I said he's a first-team All-American. Their receivers aren't even close to having a lot of receptions. If they can stretch the field and expose their other wide receivers to where, because if I'm Notre Dame, I'm going to say, I got to stop Tyler Warren, and I got to make everybody else beat us, which is a tall task because nobody's been able to stop him. And I'm a Colston Loveland guy from Michigan. This kid for Penn State is unreal. He's the best tight end in college football. And I think Loveland will be a first-round pick too, but Tyler Warren's like 6'4", 6'5". He's like 240. The mammoth hands. A safety can't cover him. So Notre Dame, on the flip side, struggled against Georgia's man coverage, and Penn State's going to play man coverage. So can the Georgia receivers get open? That's going to be a huge task. I'm sure Marcus Freeman will have his guys ready. I think James Franklin's going to have his guys ready. And then for me, it's going to be for Notre Dame. Defense is going to have to force turnovers like any game, any high school, anyone you talk to coach, it's like, okay, you got to stop the run, got to force turnovers, got to win special teams, and you got to win field position. I think that's the key to this game. And for me, it's like literally flip a coin. Points per game, I'm going to read you these numbers. Penn State's averaging 33.7, Notre Dame's averaging 38.8. Pretty close. Defenses, Penn State's only giving up 15.8, Notre Dame 13.8. So two really good defenses going head to head. Which coach do you trust the most? Notre Dame's schedule wasn't that great. Yeah, they lost to NIU. Penn State, I think, to me, the game-changing, eye-opening game was the loss to Oregon, where Drew Aller looked really good. If that Penn State team shows up, Penn State can win the whole thing. Because I think Penn State had a chance to beat Ohio State during the year. If you remember, they had it first and goal inside the 10. They brought in the 275-pound lineman, and they put him in motion like horrible play calling inside the red zone for Penn State against Ohio State. So I think if they had to go back and do it again, I think obviously they would have did some things differently. But for me, I don't know how much I trust James Franklin in this game. I think Drew Aller, I would put my money on Drew Aller. I think he's the better quarterback. Riley Leonard doesn't make mistakes. Drew Aller's made some mistakes. He hasn't made them lately. Notre Dame physical up front. I think Penn State's got the better front. I think they got more NFL caliber guys, but I would give the edge to Penn State. But I'd give the edge coaching-wise, I think, to Notre Dame. We'll see. I'm really torn. I like I said, I'm looking at my sheet on my screen. I'm sitting there saying, okay, I have the team I'm going to pick, but does not mean that's who I'm going with here in about 10 minutes. All right, let's go to the other one. I don't think this one's even a game. I know. If Cody's listening, Cody's going to say, I'm sick and tired of hearing the Ohio State stuff. Again, I'm a Michigan guy. I can't stand Ohio State, but I do not think this game's close. I think Ohio State wins this game pretty handily, but Texas has athletes, so you can't deny that that they don't. So this is the first time, and I had to go back and do some research on this. This is the first time Ohio State and Texas have played in 16 years. And when I said that, I said, wow. Two big name schools like this, the first time they've played each other, not even like a bowl game or anything like that, like in the last 5-6 years. It's been 16 years since those teams have played. This is going to be, to me, it's going to be a battle of offense, defense. Ohio State, the number one total defense in the country. They have the best run defense in the country. And their offense, well, let's just say they have the best skilled guys on the outside in the country. And how is Texas going to defend Ohio State is going to be really key. If Texas can get out early, like against Michigan, Will Howard threw the interception inside their own end zone, inside like the 15, 20-yard line. Michigan went in, scored. If Texas can get ahead early in this game, I think you can see this being a pretty good game. I don't know how you slow this Ohio State team down. Unless Will Howard comes out and struggles, this is basically a home game for Texas. So that's one advantage for Texas in this game. I have a few numbers here. I want to read some of these numbers here on my sheet. So Texas averages 278 yards passing. Ohio State only gives up 152 yards passing. They have the number one pass defense in the country. Quinn Ewers, if you remember, he's a former Ohio State quarterback that transferred. He was there when CJ Stroud was there. He was like third string and he transferred. He had a really interesting comment this week when listening to some of their interviews. He said, Ohio State, you know, is 0-4 against Michigan the last 4 years. But he says, really, us Ohio State guys are 1-4 because Texas beat Michigan early in the season. And he goes, well, maybe Ohio State wouldn't have been 0-4 if Ryan Day would have made a change at quarterback. I thought that was pretty impressive considering you're going to go play him now. But they don't give up a lot of yards. Like Ohio State's defense is, again, it's the number one defense in the country. So it's like they don't give up a lot on the ground running the ball. They don't really give up a lot through the air. Where do you find these weak spots? You got to get turnovers. You got to work off a short field. And I think that the special teams, the punt game, field position game is going to be huge. Let me give you some more numbers here. Ohio State is 5th and only giving up 92 yards a game on the ground. Texas has struggled to run the ball. Nationally, Texas is 63rd in the country. They're only averaging 165 yards on the ground. So if Texas struggles to run the ball and they become one-dimensional, good luck. Because I think Ohio State's pass rush is as good as anybody's in the country. Now, Texas's O-line, I think they finished 3rd or 4th for the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best O-line in the country, which I think was won by Army this year. They only give up about 2.5 sacks a game. And how about this? Ohio State's got the 3rd best pass rush in the game as far as sacks in a game. And JT's got 10 sacks for Ohio State. So how well do they hold up front? And then here's the other thing. Again, I said this. What the hell do you do with Jeremiah Smith? Like, if you double him, then that leaves Emeka Egbuka, who I think is going to be a first-round draft pick. And then you still got the senior Cardell Tate, who doesn't really get a lot of looks because you got the freshman phenom. But I think Cardell Tate and Emeka Egbuka are as good as anybody in the country. If they were on any other team in the country, both those two would probably be 1,000-yard receivers. And I think Egbuka is huge in the run game. And I don't know if my buddy Nick from CBus is watching me tonight. Maybe he'd disagree with me when I say this, but I think Emeka Egbuka has been huge for the Buckeyes and Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Jenkins and Judkins in the run game. I think he's great downfield blocking. And I think he's been really good on 3rd down, for Will Howard as a target inside the red zone. Will Howard's got some good numbers. Will Howard does have the 9 interceptions, but I think when you look at Ohio State, as I said this earlier in the year when I talked about Coach Prime in Colorado, Prime built Colorado from the outside in. Receivers, the skilled guys, Colorado's skilled guys are as good as anybody in the country. But where Colorado struggled was Shedeur Sanders was the most sacked quarterback in the country still. You look at Ohio State, and you can say they have the weapons on the outside. They got 2 backs that are just under 1,000 yards rushing. One has, you ready for this? Henderson's got 925. Judkins has 924. They both have 10 touchdowns. It's crazy to even see that. I had to go back and look and say, I got to see the stats on the 2 backs because when you watch them in games, it's like their numbers are identical. They almost have 2,000-yard backs, 1,000-yard receiver. And Will Howard, who, he's got the 9 picks, he's thrown for over 3,000 yards. So, they have it from the outside. It's going to come down for Ohio State as they still got that makeshift offensive line, which really hasn't been exposed. And listen, credit Ohio State, credit the offensive line coach. They've been able to make some adjustments. I think they moved like a left guard to right tackle or a right guard to left tackle, whatever it might be, right? You got to give them some credit for the job that they've done with making some changes. However, when you go and flip the script and you look at Texas for this game, I don't have a lot of faith in Quinn Ewers, who's thrown for over 3,000, just like Will Howard, but he's got 11 picks. So here's the big question for me that I'll propose to you is how soon, if you're Steve Sarkisian in this game, like let's say Ohio State gets up 14-0 right out of the gate. How long does Sark wait before he makes the change and goes to Arch Manning? Because he's really loyal to Quinn Ewers. He's a lot loyal than I would be because I would have went to Archie Manning probably a month and a half ago, halfway through the season. And I don't want to take anything away from Ewers. I think Ewers has had a solid college career, which, by the way, there's already a Big Ten team. Could it be Ohio State? Many think it's Oregon that have offered Quinn Ewers $6 million to come back next year for another year of eligibility, which, by the way, NFL scouts have said he should come back for another year because he's not going to be a first round pick in the draft. So somebody's already offered him $6 million. My money would say it's probably Oregon that's offered him the money to come back. So I don't really have a lot of faith, but how long does Sark wait? You can't just put him in to run the football. I think at this point in the season, when they put Archie Manning in, like, you got to let him come in and throw the football. But if they get behind, how soon does he wait? The other thing I think for Ryan Day, I think they've been really aggressive, in these playoff games right out of the gate. I think Chip Kelly's called a really good game for the Buckeyes. He's found ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball, whether it's using motions, put him in the backfield. I think they've been really aggressive to start the game, throwing the ball downfield. If Ohio State gets behind in this game, does Will Howard panic? I don't know if I'd panic if I was him with the weapons he has, because Ohio State can score in no time. But if one team gets out in front of the other, who panics first? And again, Texas hasn't been able to run the ball at all. Ohio State can run the ball. Texas has a really good front four. Ohio State's got a really good front four. Penn State, really good front four. Notre Dame, really good front four. So, like in high school, I love this because, again, I'm old school. I'd say I'm still young, but I'm still the old school high school coach that says, I'm going to run the football and I'm going to play really good defense and stop the run. Like, that's been my mentality. Like, that was always my dad's thing. We're going to run the football. I don't care if I'm in the I formation and we're getting 3-4 yards a carry. It's 3rd and 2. Like, stop us. We may look boring. We might not be the really flashy, let's throw the ball all over the field. But if you look at these teams that are in the semifinals, there's a common denominator. Is really physical in the trenches, play really good defense. And it's going to be, I think, the Notre Dame game, I think, is going to be the best game. I don't have any faith that the Ohio State-Texas game is going to be close. I could be completely wrong. But we'll see. Maybe sometimes when I think that way, like I think the Penn State-Notre Dame game, and I think when you look at all the ratings this week and all the sports shows, and I listen to all the sports talk shows. I'm on Twitter all the time. I listen to all that stuff. Is sometimes the games that everybody think is going to be the best game doesn't turn into be the best game. Like, I didn't think the Arizona State-Texas game was going to be a good game. Arizona State was a 2-touchdown dog. They should have beat Texas last week. So sometimes it doesn't always play out that way. I just think Ohio State's the hottest team in the country right now in the playoffs. But we'll see. I think it could be a really good game. And I think if it's a home game for Texas, Ohio State's going to travel really well, but it's a home game for Texas. So you can't take that away at all, because again, it's a home game. Well, that's going to lead me to my picks here. And again, I'm really torn by this because, again, I really, really, really like Marcus Freeman, and I really want to pick Notre Dame in this game. But I'm gonna lean, and I'm gonna pick Penn State. Yes, I'm a Big Ten homer, being a Michigan guy, but I just think that Drew Aller, the way he's playing, I think if Notre Dame gets behind double digits, can Riley Leonard throw the football to come back and win a football game. He hasn't had to. So I'm not going to knock Riley Leonard. He's a good kid. He's a winner no matter where he's been. He's won games. They battled through that loss to Northern Illinois this year. And they've been red hot. So do I think he can? I do. And I think if Notre Dame gets through this game, I think Notre Dame and Penn State can play with Ohio State. I don't know if they can beat them. Penn State already played them once and fell short. I don't know if anybody can beat Ohio State, but I do think both these teams can beat Ohio State. So I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to lay the 2.5. I think this will be the best game of the two. So I'm going to go a big game, James. I think he gets it done, and I think they punch their ticket and play for a national championship. All right, so the other one. You guys know I'm going to pick Ohio State in this game. I can't not pick Ohio State in this game. But 5.5 to me, I was looking to say maybe Sark finds a way to keep this game close. I don't see it. I think Ohio State beats them by 10 or more. I think this is another, 38-16, 38-13, somewhere 35-13. I do not think Texas scores 20 or more points against Ohio State, but Texas has athletes. That is one thing. And if Sark's a really good offensive coordinator. So if he can find a way to run the ball, you just can't line up Quinn Ewers back there and throw it 40 times against this Buckeye front who has just been tenacious at getting to the quarterback. So I'm going to take Ohio State. I'm going to lay the 5.5. I think the other game's going to be the best game of the two. I think Ohio State punches their ticket, and I think it's a Big Ten final. I think it's Ohio State, Penn State. I'm not sure anybody wants to see that as a rematch because then you'd say it's hard to beat a team twice. The way Ohio State's, against James Franklin, Penn State can't beat them. But then you say, well, it's an opportunity for James Franklin to get that key win over Ohio State for a national championship. Or do you say, man, I'd love to see Marcus Freeman get a shot against the team that he played for. He was a linebacker for the Buckeyes, which I think would be, pretty cool. So we'll see. So I'm going to ride with both Ohio State and I'll ride with Penn State, a Big Ten championship game, which I'll break that puppy down for you next week. So again, I want to give a shout out to all the followers on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify for all the podcast listeners. Again, a lot of good things coming down here on the Rock Pile. There'll be some merchandise out there. I'll have some shirts and stuff to start. This week on Sunday will be the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. I'll air right here on the Rock Pile. Again, I'll be talking Utica University hockey with Gary Heenan. And then I'll talk to Copper City Fitness owner Tiffany Mills. And then I'll be the interviewee on the Rock Capone show on Sunday at 10:30. It's hard for me to be an interviewee because I'm usually the one doing the interviews, but it'll be nice to sit back and answer some questions. So again, I really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight and following me on the Rock Pile. Continue to do so for me. Like, share, subscribe anytime. I really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. So enjoy the weekend, enjoy the games. I'll talk to you on Sunday on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.